For Global Business Update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning. Nice to be talking to you again. Let's do Asia Pacific first of all, as we normally do. The banking turmoil appears to have abated very, very slightly. So that means that both the Chinese markets and Hong Kong markets are marginally up, but certainly those major worries appear to have dissipated. Alibaba founder Jack Ma, do you remember he sort of disappeared from people's sight after he gave what were thought to be rather controversial messages about the Chinese administration? Well, he's surfaced again. People are taking this as a slight relaxation of Beijing's attitude to tech and to Jack Ma and indeed to Alibaba. What he's been doing is been talking to teachers once again, but this time about how they can educate their pupils in artificial intelligence. Meanwhile, as far as China's Belt and Road Initiative is concerned, now, again, it's a very, very clumsy translation. This is the best that people have been able to come up with. The long and the short of it is China trying to extend its influence over the world by sea and also by roads, Belt being the road, sea being the belt. The belt being the sea, the roads speak for themselves clearly. But the thing is that it's got so many debtor countries now, 22 of them, way above the level of 2019 to 2022. And it's rising. The debt to these countries is rising. And what China doesn't do, even though it's a member of the IMF, is have multilateral solutions to these kind of things. Do you remember last week, the doctor and I were talking about the way that Sri Lanka was asking China and the other debtor nations to get together? China won't do that. China does it on its own, and China is and Sri Lanka is watching these developments very, very carefully indeed as to how China actually meets its debt obligations to other countries it's been into, some of whom have reneged on their debt. Some of the infrastructure projects there have been subject to corruption, and so on. Let's take a look. Let's shift now to the United States. We're seeing a market that jumped back basically yesterday. Not too bad. Dow's up about 200 points in normal trading yesterday. First Republic is getting more time to shore up its own liquidity. Tech shares have been falling, though, because they always do, because growth shares, tech shares are, fall because interest rates have felt to go higher. And the United States has struck a trade deal with Japan about battery minerals, and it means that Japan also can avail itself of the various tax credits that the Biden administration has brought in. Disney, let's turn to Disney now, planning another 7,000 layoffs. This is Bob Iger, who's moved in there, the new CEO, for the second time. He's moving in these job cuts right across the company, across media, distribution, parks, resorts, and of course ESPN. That the company is looking to save $5.5 billion of costs this year. And that's the way that it's going at the moment. But that's the restructuring that's taking place as far as Disney is concerned. The chief of Saudi National Bank, let's take it to Saudi now, has resigned after, well, in time terms, after the Credit Suisse comments that he made about no longer supporting that bank, and of course the banking turmoil that you know only too well. The thing is, it's a time thing. What he's saying is, and the company's saying, he's going for personal reasons, but actually those remarks are so close to actually the demise of Credit Suisse that you can't help linking the two. As far as the United Kingdom is concerned, food inflation has reached now a record high. Food inflation is especially important to those on lower income because they tend to spend more of their income on food, up to 15% now. They're not going to get any joy from the Bank of England, which is on course to beat inflation. And civil servants are about to go on strike as well. They've been offered 2 to 3% pay increases. They want 10%. Whether or not they'll get that is very difficult to tell at the moment. And let's do our main commodities at the moment. Oil, it's about 1% up on the fact that this appears to be a slight relaxation in the worries about the bank turmoil. And gold didn't reach 2,000, didn't maintain that, don't think it will maintain it consistently because of profit taking and the general uncertainties that surround the world. That's the global view this morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. Now for business updates across the African continent, Rochu Sodiri joins us. Good morning, Rochu.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, it was a really good interview in this day newspaper with Dr. Grover Anil. He's been in Nigeria for a couple decades now, lives here, and he has a medical practice. So it was a pretty in-depth interview on pretty much Nigeria's medical sector. And the reason why I like these kind of interviews that this day carries out is, I mean, this is what we all do for a living, right? We interview different individuals from different sectors of the economy, and they give you the in-depth, situation report on what is going on. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of quotables here, but just off the bat, one of the things that he was asked about is about how far we've come with respect to the medical sector in Nigeria. And yeah, I mean, this is something you hear over and over, but again, this is 2023, where he's talking about how far we've come in terms of equipment, expertise and so on. So here's a quote from him where he says that as far as where we are, as far as healthcare infrastructure is concerned in Nigeria, since I've been living here for more than 20 years, I would say we have a long way to go. We're still, lagging behind in terms of technology, in terms of expertise. He was also asked about, okay, what do you suggest? What are your suggestions with respect to how to get things going? He says, I keep banging on about this, low interest loans. I don't know, there's no sector that can survive if you don't have a low cost of borrowing. So he says low interest loans, official FX for the whole sector, for the medical sector, then waiving custom duties on medical equipment, that's the equipment that's coming in, and then special incentives and then tax holidays for the sector. Now, look, we talked about Vice President Osibanjo when he had that procedure here in Nigeria with a hospital here. We celebrated that. President Buhari inaugurated that healthcare facility in Kogi State. Governor Yahya Bello, brought him in. We toured it. We covered it live. But aside from these, pockets of celebrating healthcare, the sector still hasn't moved forward. It has not moved forward over the last years. Let's even go back to our COVID coverage, which Arise TV's COVID coverage on the medical sector was second to none. Here is the head of First Cardiologist, Dr. Adeyemi, back in 2020 or so on Newsday, talking about healthcare and his issues.
I don't want to get in trouble on air, but I will say a few things. The biggest challenge for us, I think, in my opinion, is bringing in medical equipment and consumables. It is very difficult, very, very difficult, apart from expense. Then you got to go through customs. Then you got to go through NAFDAC. Then you've got to go through, I think it's SONCAP.
Even in these times of COVID-19 and the worldwide
It is
pandemic?
very difficult because the amount of paperwork you have to provide to prove you're not trying to, like in some instances, you bring in operating theater lights. If you do not do the paperwork tight, customs will call it a chandelier. Then you got to pay this sort of thing. So without trying to get into trouble, some of the policies and agencies the government has in place seem to be counterproductive. And that's one thing I hope we can eventually sort out, because it is difficult to bring in equipment here. The VOOM Foundation, who brought in stuff, the amount of paperwork and bureaucracy they had to go through to bring in equipment, it's mind-boggling. It is. And still, some got seized at the airport.
So that was 2020. This is now 2023. There has, and again, look, we really, when you throw out the word failure a lot and people want to jump on your neck, Rufai, we just have to call it what it is.
Well,
and
failure is failure now.
Failure is failure, and this is just the medical sector. You now bring in manufacturing, you bring in a whole bunch of sectors. What progress have we made? So that's a 3-year interview from 3 years ago. We now have This Day News with This Day Newspaper, the interview here in 2023. Anyway, Kenya, real quick. Kenya Airways, historic loss of 38-point-something billion shillings in fiscal year 2022. What happened was the government decided to take over servicing of a dollar loan in 2022, where interest rates are rising and things are getting more. So they are saying they'll break even in 2024 and be profitable in 2025, but that's our updates.
How? That's going to be the first question I'm going to ask. How are they going to break even? With all of this, 38 billion shilling and all of that, you're going to turn it around? With all of this happening in the world today, and America, like you said, rightly, is still going to raise interest rate for the foreseeable future.
Which makes your dollar
I mean, let's
expensive.
keep kidding ourselves. But when we keep saying that the government failed in everything, people shout, oh, you have no right, be objective, you are not neutral, you are not this. But what is failure? Failure is failure. What is success? Success is success.
This is what it is.
A child gets 40%, is fail.
That's it.
A child gets 75% or 80%, is pass. Simple as ABC. Have we succeeded in terms of using the customs to make business viable in this country in terms of duty and all of that? We failed. Is it only medical sector? Have you seen the aviation sector to complain bitterly? We failed. So the customs, in a bid to make its own money, is stifling businesses. And that's why cost of doing business keeps going up in the country because of the delay from customs and other problems you face, and the fact that we ourselves also disrupt businesses. Look at what I was saying yesterday. Can you believe people have set up modular refineries in this country? They are still buying crude from NNPC in dollars. Where you know that there's scarcity of forex.
Right.
So this over-dependence on dollars, because the federal government wants to have its own dollars, rather than our naira, is also a problem with our naira. So you can see the problems in society. So I'm happy people are talking about it. Hope they listen.
I hope so. And again, the next administration, this is now their baby, and this is now their issue that they have to deal with.
Okay, the key issue with regard to the contribution by Dr. Grover Aneo, the CEO of Grover Hospital, the argument that he has made about access to forex at officiary, about tax waivers for the medical sector, and also about special incentives and tax holidays. It's the same argument you can make across board.
Exactly.
Even for the media industry. Once upon a time in this country, newspaper houses used to buy, newsprint from Nigeria, produced from Okuiboku, produced in another plant in Oshogo, but today everything is imported, even for broadcast stations. So for a government that is committed to promoting knowledge, you have to support that sector. Now, for a government that wants to check medical tourism and also ensure that you have a very strong health sector, you also have to support the medical sector. For a country that wants to create jobs, you have to provide incentives for the manufacturing sector. So the argument by Dr. Adeyemi and Dr. Anil makes sense. And it's an argument that you can extend further. In terms of creating an enabling business environment, in terms of a social policy, economic policy that works for the people. However, what we have seen in the past is that some of these policies were abused, even when they were introduced. At a point, the Nigerian government had to take a decision about tax waivers, because tax waivers were being used to favor some people, to create an oligopoly in many sectors of the economy. That is where the danger lies. Ensuring good governance, corporate governance in the administration. As for Kenya, what are the lessons we can learn from Kenya? Kenya Airways is talking about high cost of fuel, aviation fuel. That's familiar. Kenya Airways is talking about pilot strike. Kenya Airways is talking also about forex.
Indeed.
Access to forex. That also should be familiar.
Yes.
Because airlines in Nigeria also talk about it. That airways has been in trouble since 2018.
Indeed.
Uhuru Kenyatta tried to address the problem by looking for loans, by taking up the debts. When President Ruto got there, President Ruto said he's going to have a different turnaround. Kenya government has 48% stake. Air France and KLM also have a stake in it. So the issue is, how do you turn it around? What exactly does the government of Kenya intend to do, and what lessons can we learn from their example? That's what I think.
Nigeria Air is taking off before the inauguration. Don't forget our own. So just keep that in mind. We're taking off before inauguration.
We don't end up like Kenya Airways.
Exactly.